This past weekend, I went to a desert rave. Now, if you know me, then you probably know that a desert rave is probably the last place you'd find me. But this past weekend, I said, you know what? I'm gonna try something new, and I don't regret it. So let me give you some context on what this desert rave was. So my best friend, Matisse, absolute stud, president of the ski and board club at UCLA. He was telling me that he was organizing a big desert rave on some BLM land in Joshua Tree with like 5 other schools to what he was gonna call snowchella. So like a Coachella in the winter. And so when I first heard about it, I said, hard pass, not happening. But then I realized you make the most growth when you're outside of your comfort zone. With that being said, I was about to make a ton of growth because I would be not even like outside of my comfort zone. I'd be like light years beyond my comfort zone. The thought of being crusty, dusty, musty, and crusty again in the middle of nowhere sounds like the worst thing in the world, but I went. So we first show up, and there are 2 major problems. First off, there's a whole circle of where all the cars are. That's fine, you know, it's nice to see that all the schools got together and they were experiencing camaraderie. Nothing better than that. But the only problem was that they were about 1.5 miles from where the stage is. You know, they point off into the distance. They're like, yeah, it's just down there, a little blip across the desert. That's problem 1. Second problem, we are in the middle of a desert storm. And it's not like, oh, you know, the wind was picking up and it was a little uncomfortable. It was like, where are my glasses? Put on the hoodie. Does anybody have a hard hat? This is not good. Matisse gets out of the car. His hat doesn't just fall off, like it flies off. It felt like I was watching a cartoon in real life. It's like tumbling down. I'm not gonna lie, like he's a runner. He ran cross country and track in high school, and that hat was smoking him. And by the time he gets it, he's about 100 yards away from the car. So those were the conditions we were dealing with. But having this new mindset of, you know what, roll with the punches. Let's see what can happen. So Matisse tells me we need to make a wall of cars to cover the sand and the wind and everything else in front of the stage. So I said, yes, sir. Aye, Captain. I start directing these cars. First wall goes up. More cars start coming in. Second wall goes up. More cars come in. Third wall goes up. All of a sudden, we have a perfect barrier. And that's when I realized all we have to do now is enjoy the rave. So, of course, the rave was a good time. But you know, in those moments of just pure chaos, or more just like things are hectic, lots of lights in your face, a ton of noise, you know, a lot of things are going on at once. But you have this moment of clarity where you can just kind of take a step back and just appreciate everything for what it is. I had one of those moments, and I was able to realize my best friend had been able to bring together all these people in the middle of nowhere. Like, we couldn't just send out an address. Like, we had to send out a pin location. And like, there were no landmarks to go off of. Definition of middle of nowhere. And we were still able to get all these people there. Gotta say, I'm pretty proud of the guy. Good stuff, Matisse. You're a king. Now here's a fun side story. Middle of the rave, everything's going on. I go back to the car with Mary and Alize. I'm in the middle of the doorway behind the passenger seat. So I'm kind of leaning in. So then this girl opens the driver's side door. And I've never seen her in my life. But she just starts talking, you know, having a full-on conversation. The only problem was that no words were coming out of her mouth. No audio. It's like her mic was turned off. And at first I thought it was me. I really did. I thought I must have been too close to the speaker. My drums are broken. So Alize tells her, nothing's coming out. We can't hear you. You know, you're being a mime right now. And so I guess the girl had the realization too, because she starts talking and she's telling us she's looking for her car. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be the hero. I'll help her find her car. It can't be that difficult, right? You know, I hyped up the wall of cars, but it wasn't too big. And so I was like, here, babe, come on, let's go find your car. So I'm walking through the line of cars, and she says, I actually had to drive to get to the stage. And so remember how I said there were 2 campsites when we first got there? I literally had to walk this girl across the desert. If that wasn't bad enough, unlike when she first arrived at the car, she would not stop talking. You know, I love when people talk, but you know, I prefer silence when they drop the bombshell that I have to walk across the desert. But you know what? I realized Matisse was doing so much to keep the peace, to make sure everyone was having a good time. This was the least I could do. And so I dropped her off at her car, I turn around, and you know, you see those people in the desert and they look off in the distance and there's like palm trees and like a lake, a perfect mirage. I was looking off and it was just lights, music, and just like fun. And I was very, very far away. I started trekking. I felt like Tom Hanks from not Survivor, Castaway. Every step did not feel like I was getting closer, but we got there and we had a great time. So morning rolls around and it was one of those sleeps where it felt like I never fell asleep. Feels like I closed my eyes and I woke up 5 minutes later. The only reason I knew that it was morning was because the tent had no roof. So like I can see that the sun was up now, but rave music was still bumping. And so I was a little confused. Eventually I get up, music stopped, and looking for Matisse because he wasn't in the tent. And I find him in his car. He's asleep. And I'm like, like that's strange. Like the fact that he's like asleep and like kind of everyone's getting up, cleaning up. And then I hear that he had actually just fallen asleep and that I caught him right as he entered the slumber. And so another proud moment to see my king after a long day finally get to rest. And that was the desert rave. Snowchella. Moral of the story. Put yourself out there. Just go for it. It's okay being outside of your comfort zone because that's where you'll grow. Worst case scenario is you'll have a funny story to tell your friends about how you had the worst weekend that you could have possibly had. Best case scenario is that you have a great time. You experience something new and you even get to walk a girl across the desert.